Thank you, Speaker. With permission, I would like to make a statement about the climate and nature crisis. On the day the Met Office publishes its State of the UK Climate Report 2024, the Environment Secretary and I want to share with the British people what we know about the scale of the crisis and explain the action we're taking in response. We intend this to become an annual statement to Parliament. Let me start by setting out what we know from the science. According to the World Meteorological Organization, the last decade has seen the 10 warmest years on record globally. And they say long-term global warming, assessed by a range of methods, is estimated to be 1.34 and 1.41 Celsius above pre-industrial levels. And last year was the first time we saw an individual year above 1.5 degrees. Today's Met Office report shows that in line with what is happening globally, the UK's climate is getting hotter and wetter with more extreme events. The Central England temperature series shows recent warmth has far exceeded any temperatures observed in at least 300 years. Over the last 50 years, the number of days above 28 degrees centigrade have doubled and above 30 degrees have trebled. This spring was the UK's warmest on record, beating the record broken last year. Meanwhile, warming oceans and melting ice sheets have contributed to sea levels around the UK rising by 13.4 centimetres over the past 3 decades, and this is accelerating. Mr. Speaker, the science is unequivocal about why this is happening. As the Met Office said this morning, and I quote, "This is not a natural variation in our climate. Human emissions of greenhouse gases are warming the atmosphere and changing the weather we experience." And Mr. Speaker, we know climate change and nature loss are fundamentally linked and contribute to each other. Globally, we are losing species at a much faster rate than at any time in human history. Here in Britain, a quarter of our mammals and nearly half of our bird species are currently at risk of extinction, with birds like starlings, turtle doves, and grey partridges under threat. The abundance of species in England has fallen by an estimated third since 1970. And Britain has become one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. So, Mr. Speaker, the impacts of extreme weather and nature loss aren't simply a future threat to our country. They are already here and having impacts on our way of life. We know heavy rainfall made last year's harvest the second worst in at least 4 decades, costing farmers hundreds of millions of pounds. More than half of our best agricultural land and over 6 million properties in England are already at risk of flooding, according to the Environment Agency. According to the UK Health Security Agency, there were more than 10,000 excess deaths, 10,000 people losing their lives during English heat waves between 2020 and 2024. And as we know recently, rising temperatures place pressures on every aspect of our national life. We've seen this again over the last few days with incidents of wildfires from Surrey to Scotland, disruption due to trains overheating, and hosepipe bans announced in Yorkshire, Kent and Sussex. The climate crisis is also a massive threat to our economy. The OBR Fiscal Risks Report, published last week, says that the damage caused by climate impacts in a near 3 Celsius world is forecast to cut our GDP by 8% by the early 2070s, which will be roughly £200 billion based on current GDP. Mr. Speaker, these are uncomfortable, sobering facts. And we should make no mistake. We must act on the climate and nature crisis to protect our British way of life, because no sector or part of our society is immune from these risks. And unfortunately, all the evidence suggests this is just the start of the threat we face. As I say this, I want to particularly acknowledge today the anxieties many young people feel about these issues. My candid message to them is this: yes, there are real reasons to worry about the world you will inherit. But my message is also that we can do something about it. Every fraction of a degree of warming we prevent and every step we take to preserve nature helps limit the severity of impacts and protect our country from irreparable harm. And Mr. Speaker, it is our generations today which have a unique opportunity to act. Because unlike previous generations, we can see the evidence of the climate and nature crisis all around us. And yet we still have time to limit the worst effects. So the only answer is to reduce emissions, protect and restore nature, and adapt to the impacts that are now inevitable. Let me take these in turn. those who doubt whether Britain can have any impact on the pathway of global emissions, the lesson of history is that we can. Before the Paris Climate Agreement was negotiated 10 years ago, the world was on course for 4 degrees centigrade of global warming. Now national commitments imply 2.6 degrees of warming, or global warming below 2 degrees if countries meet their full climate targets. We remain way off track from where we need to be as a world, but we in this country have helped make a difference across parties. In 2008, this House came together to pass the world's first Climate Change Act under a Labour government supported by Lord Cameron and the Conservative Party and parties across this House. Mr. Speaker, thanks to the power of our example, now nearly 60 countries in the world have similar legislation. In 2019, under Baroness May, the UK became the first major economy to legislate for net zero by 2050, supported by the Labour Party and parties across this House. Now in part thanks to the actions at COP26 in Glasgow, including the leadership of Lord Sharma as president of the COP. 80% of global GDP is covered by net zero commitments. In 2021, England became the first country to introduce a legal duty to halt species decline by 2030, led by Boris Johnson and supported by parties across this House. Now 196 countries are signed up to the Global Biodiversity Framework to halt and reverse nature loss. Mr. Speaker, the lesson is clear. The choices we make as a country have influenced the course of global action, and in doing so, reduce the impact of the climate and nature crisis on future generations in Britain. To those who say Britain cannot make a difference, I say you are wrong. Stop talking our country down. British leadership matters. We also know that climate and nature action has huge potential upside, and not just for future generations. It has the potential for better lives today in energy security, lower bills, cleaner air, good jobs, better health and well-being, and improved access to nature. So this government believes in sticking to our traditions as a country of climate and nature leadership. Indeed, turning away now, at this moment of all moments, when the threat and opportunity are clearer than ever, would be the greatest dereliction of duty and betrayal of future generations. That is why one of the government's 5 missions is to achieve clean power by 2030 and accelerate to net zero across the economy. That's why at COP29, we announced a 1.5 degree aligned target for 2035 based on legislation passed under the last Conservative government. That's why we're driving forward on our commitments to protect 30% of our land and seas for nature and halt species loss by the end of the decade. And nature in the UK's history at the spending review, which will drive jobs across the country. And because the actions we need are not just about government, we are also determined to help communities take climate and nature action in their own areas, from driving the expansion of local and community-owned clean energy projects, through Great British Energy, to supporting mayors and local government to accelerate action. And at COP30 and beyond, we're determined to once again use the power of our example to work with others to uphold the objectives of the Paris Agreement, including with ambitious climate targets, action to accelerate the clean energy revolution, and protection of nature and forests. But Mr. Speaker, as I've said, action on emissions is not enough on its own. We must also protect the British people from the impacts we already see, and sadly, the greater impacts we are likely to see in the future. This work, led by my right friend, the Environment Secretary, requires action across society, from homes and buildings to critical infrastructure to our natural environment. We are now delivering Britain's largest ever flood defence programme, investing £7.9 billion over the next decade in flood barriers and nature-based solutions like wetland restoration. This comes alongside pioneering local nature recovery strategies with measures like tree planting and peat restoration that deliver adaptation and nature recovery together. And in my department, as we drive forward on our plan to upgrade millions of homes, we've consulted on expanding the boiler upgrade scheme to include air-to-air heat pumps, which can offer cooling as well as heating. But, Mr. Speaker, I need to be candid with the House. We know this is just the beginning of the reckoning we need about how our country needs to adapt across all parts of society in the years to come. And this government is determined to put climate resilience at the heart of our decision making. Mr. Speaker, let me close by saying that we've been at our best in this House when we've worked across parties on these issues. I want to thank the Honourable Member for South Cotswolds for introducing the Climate and Nature Bill, my honourable friends and members for Sheffield Hallam and Leeds Central and Headingley for our discussions earlier this year and the run-up to that bill, as well as the other co-sponsors who highlighted the need for today's statement. And let me take this opportunity to pay tribute to current and former members across the House for their tireless advocacy on climate and nature. And Mr. Speaker, I'll end by saying this. The safety of our citizens, our natural world, the country we pass on, is not a Labour cause or a Conservative cause or that of any other party. It is a British cause. It is a cause of us all, and a cause that requires all of us to consider our responsibilities to the generations of today and the generations to come. And I commend this statement to the House.